I know y'all don't want to hear from me, so I will be brief. Because it is my honor to introduce the Green Party nominee in 2008. To the viewers of C-SPAN, to folks across this country, because of the corporate stranglehold on media, I believe I must introduce you to Cynthia McKinney. Because America, corporate media has been lying to you. Corporate media is from you. And I have the great privilege and honor of introducing a champion, a leader of the progressive movement in our lifetimes. That is Cynthia McKinney. Because America, Cynthia McKinney has served 12 years in the United States Congress. And before that, over a decade in the Georgia State Legislature. She has been a courageous voice for the voiceless and has spoken truth to power her entire political career. Cynthia McKinney authored legislation to eliminate subsidies for corporations which are exporting jobs to so-called third world countries, the global south. Cynthia McKinney has authored legislation to create real living wage jobs in the United States. Cynthia McKinney authored legislation to repeal the Military Tribunals Act. Cynthia McKinney authored legislation to protect the national forest and to restore those ecosystems. Cynthia McKinney has authored legislation to completely eliminate depleted uranium weapons in this country. Cynthia McKinney is the only presidential candidate calling for a real, full, and complete investigation into who knew what and when regarding the events of September 11, 2001. Gentlemen, sisters and brothers in the Green Party, America, Cynthia McKinney!
In 1851, in Akron, Ohio, a former slave woman, abolitionist and women's rights activist by the name of Sojourner Truth, gave a speech now known as Ain't I a Woman? Sojourner Truth began her remarks, well, children, where there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. She then went on to say that even though she was a woman, no one had ever helped her out of carriages or lifted her over ditches or given her a seat of honor in any place. Instead, she acknowledged that as a former slave and as a black woman, she had to bear the lash as well as any man, and that she had borne 13 children and seen most of them sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Ain't I a woman? Finally, Sojourner Truth says, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. As it was in 1851, so too it is in 2008. There's so much racket that we too know something is out of kilter. In 1851, the racket was about a woman's right to vote. In 1848, just a few years before Sojourner uttered those now famous words, ain't I a woman, suffragists met in Seneca Falls, New York, and issued a declaration. The declaration began, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it and to insist upon the institution of a new government. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of the world, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to demand the equal station to which they are entitled. 260 women and 40 men gathered in Seneca Falls, New York, declared their independence from the politics of their present, and embarked upon a struggle to create a politics for the future. That bold move by a handful of people in one relatively small room laid the groundwork and is the precedent for what we do today. The Seneca Falls Declaration represented a clean break from the past, freedom at last from mental slavery. The Seneca Falls Declaration and the Akron, Ohio meeting inaugurated 72 years of struggle that ended with the passage of the 19th Amendment in August of 1920, granting women the right to vote. And 88 years later, with the Green Party as its conductor, the history train is rolling down the tracks. The Green Party is making history today. According to one source, 45 women have run for president in primary elections in the United States in the 20th century. 22 have made it on the ballot in at least one state in November. Thank you, Green Party, for pulling this history train from the station.